at that point, I just kind of settled in Wales, and it sounds awful, Wolf, but the only two things I really knew at that point were kind of like was like organised offending and Class A drugs, and they even existed in Bangor. And I think that's probably one of the things that I've loved about it the most, is I've just been allowed to completely reinvent myself, because there's no, like I say, these, don't get me wrong, there's substance use and these lads who think they're gangsters and all that sort of stuff, but the type of environment where I've come from, you know, Bangor's completely different. It's one of the safest places in the UK to live. It's got its own issues, its own problems, its own stuff with deprivation, social poverty and all that sort of stuff, but it's a completely different arena and a completely different environment. So kind of when I was here at the time, like I say, when I first got here, I just kind of thought, well, shit, I can't do what I normally do because nobody else does it here. Do you know what I mean? And I'd always, don't get me wrong, there was always a heroin issue, and there still is. It's one of Bangor's main issues, probably problems, but I never got into dealing gear just because of the amount of jail that was involved and the amount of grassing that goes on. So that was just a total no-no for me to start with. So at that point, I was like, I'll have to go straight then. Do you know what I mean? And just, and we'll see what happens. And that was kind of it, basically. Was, and it was weird because there's a lot of the stuff that we talk about. One of the big sort of programs that we use at Penryn's is Moving On in My Recovery, and one of the concepts we use is this idea sometimes about fake it till you make it. So sometimes it's just about actually trying to picture yourself where you want to be in the world, and then just acting in that way, in those behaviours that back up and support that person that you want to be. And eventually, after a period of time, that's who you become. And that's exactly what happened to me, because I was just like,
it's very interesting, isn't it? Because in another world, in some sort of counselling, and particularly some kind of transactional counselling, they would just talk that would be about just rewriting the narrative, and if you rewrite it enough times, it becomes the new narrative. Yes.
Yeah. But I think, like I say, for me, it was very much like it was a practical sort of thing, because like every choice or every decision I was faced with, it was like, well, what would a straight person do in this sort of thing? It was, you know, in this environment, in this choice, and like I said, just like little things, just like fucking paying the electric and not having a wire in the meter. Do you know what I mean? And just stuff like that, and paying your council tax and paying your TV. Like TV license still tickles me now, to be honest with you. I don't know why I'm paying it, but I get a buzz out of paying it. You know what I mean? And it just, yeah, I think it was.
I heard that the other day of someone who said that you might have been there actually when they, yeah, you were there. And do you remember when we were at that little chat in Bangor recently, and she was getting a buzz and all that conversation about paying her council tax? Do you remember?
Yeah. And I think that's what it is, mate. It's like, it's being a straight member. So it's like, once upon a time, I used to mock people like me. I used to think, you're going out to work for 40 hours a week to bring home like £400 or £500 a week. You must be some kind of mug. But now I'm like, no, that's what I actually get a buzz out of. Is so I can remember there was I think one of the big turning points for me very early on was probably about 9 months into it. I'm walking down Bangor High Street, and two coppers come round the corner in a car and jump out and fly out. Now, normally, anything before that point, as soon as it had pulled up and opened the doors, I'd have gone, don't even know if it's for me. But there was just a thing, and like I say, it was like a split. And then I thought, hang on a minute, no. So I just stood there like that. Go on, you catch it, do your bit, go and get the bastards, you know what I mean? And it was just, I think that kind of realisation hit me that moment that I'm a straight member now. I'm like not an upstanding member of society, because I still now struggle to pay parking and stuff like that, because it just, there's that little bit of me just wants to retain some kind of like rebellion. But just that kind of realisation, just a peace of mind. Because again, I come back to that sort of thing that I talked about before. Again, that's how it sort of started off as a kid. As a kid, it felt like fear. And then I've called it anxiety. That's what the label that I hang on this feeling that I've got, and I have every day. And some days it's worse, and some days it's better. I've had to have like an 8-month sabbatical from caffeine recently. I've only back to drinking coffee again 2 weeks ago. For anybody that knows me, caffeine and nicotine and my crutches. But my anxiety's been that bad with a couple of work. And again, I say anxiety, but it's just fear of impending doom. But I've always kind of. But that was, I think, one of the things that, like I say, that being legitimate gave me was that sort of that peace of mind, and that not having to worry about getting my door kicked in at 6 in the morning, to walk past the policeman without doing that funny walk, like I'm the you know what I mean, cheap or soft mints advert, or And so I think that was, I mean, I think it's weird that it's converged to how I first got into addiction was through offending and then addiction. And I think kind of recovery's worked in the same way. I got out of offending and then got into recovery. You know, don't get me wrong, I still scrabbled for a couple of years after I stopped offending, still fucked around with drugs and with substances, cocaine and stuff. And I had like a big turning point with the advent of my daughter. She was about 6 months old. But like I say, I think for me, it was almost, I think, the offending almost like acts as a trigger for the addiction or a gateway, or opens it. I think maybe it's around them type of people, because again, we'll talk about this later on, won't we? But it's a social process, addiction and recovery. You know, you lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas. It's as simple as that, isn't it?